Jen goes for a run and thinks about divorce. Her husband Dan runs after her and tries to talk to her and solve the accumulated problems. He manages to stop Jen. She complains about his appearance, but he offers to take a photo with him. The woman does not understand why Dan went with her. The night before, he drank at a party dedicated to her promotion. The woman's colleagues are now shocked by his outrageous behavior because he even managed to be rude to an elderly accountant. Jen runs away, and Dan runs after her, but soon breaks into a walk while she sees a man in a hood on the side of the road who is standing with his back to her, but the woman hurries on. At this time, Dan feels a strong spasm in his head. The girl also hears some high-pitched sound and stops in place, but after a while, everything returns to normal. The man goes on. Jen also breaks into a run and soon reaches the place from where they started jogging, but Dan is not there. The man breaks into a rather sluggish run when someone runs into him. He is indignant, but when he looks back, there is no one nearby. Soon Dan reaches a barrel standing on the side of the road. The water in it is full of garbage, and on the surface there are headphones, the same as his wife's. But then Jane runs into him, wanting to show him something strange. Dan runs after her, asking her to stop and listen to his apologies. However, his wife shows him a sign where they started their run, but the trail itself is nowhere to be found. Dan suggests that there may have been two signs, but the girl does not remember the second one and starts running again. He asks his wife to stop because he has a headache, but she only picks up speed. Finally, they stop at the sign again. The husband has already counted 4 laps, while Jen assures that the first one has ended, but there is still no trail. They realize that they cannot get out, and that every time they go around the lake, the circle begins again. Then the man suggests splitting up and going in different directions. Jen agrees, and then Dan suddenly asks his wife for forgiveness. The girl leaves. Soon she stops at a sign prohibiting swimming and looks around. Nothing has changed. The same thing happens to Dan. The path is deserted, and there is no turn to the city anywhere. He runs and suddenly crashes into his wife, but asks her to wait for him in this place and runs away. The woman does not understand anything, but obeys him. Then she sees some flashes on the shore of the pond, as if someone is taking pictures there. But Dan, who runs up, scares her because he behaves as if he had not seen her a minute ago. The couple stops again at a sign prohibiting swimming. Dan hears a ringing in his ears and wonders who might want to swim in this dirty pond. Jen also did not see a single swimmer. But then why is this sign there? She asks her husband to remove it, but he does not succeed. Then Jen decides to call someone and takes out her phone, but drops her headphones. She immediately makes sure that there is no network. Her husband has no connection either. Then the couple sets off along the trail, trying to catch a network, but nothing happens. Soon they pass by a barrel of rotten water, but the wife asks them not to stop. Suddenly, a man in a hooded jacket stands in front of them with his back to them. The couple gets scared, turns around, and again finds himself at the same sign saying, "Swimming is prohibited." The girl sees the headphones lying on the ground, picks them up, and looks puzzled at 2 pairs of absolutely identical headphones in her hands. Angry, she attacks her husband, accusing him of some kind of prank. The man tries to calm her down, but she does not listen and asks him to stop. Then he suggests going straight through the forest. They walk through the bushes for a long time until Jen gets tired. They should have stumbled upon something a long time ago, because this is not a dense forest. But for some reason, there are no houses or people. Soon the husband asks to give him a rest, and then the girl also starts to hear a ringing in her ears. Then she admits that she constantly thinks about how to hit him, and Jen can no longer tolerate this man's habits. Dan, very shocked by the frankness, reminds her that they have lived together for a very long time and are simply tired of each other. But his wife says that she wants to be happy, but with someone else. Suddenly, he considers this fair, and they don't have any time left, because when they get out, they'll start the divorce proceedings. Jen suggests that he go to his mother. The couple feels awkward, and eventually Dan chooses the direction they'll go. They run through the woods and come out to a pond. The woman is already starting to get hysterical. She doesn't want to admit the obvious and starts running again. Dan follows her, and the couple comes out to the sign again. Dan starts laughing, because he's now sure that this is someone's evil joke. Sometime later, they're sitting on the ground, unable to figure out what to do next, and suddenly they hear a man's voice ordering someone to run, but there's no one around. They go out onto the path again and soon see a hooded man ahead, but he runs away from them into the woods. The couple runs after him and sees him standing with his back to them. They approach the man, who refuses to turn around. Dan and Jen ask him numerous questions. The wife asks her husband to talk to him, but he is afraid. However, then she throws a pebble at him, which he seems not to notice. Then the wife pats him on the shoulder and hides behind her husband. Suddenly, another hooded man runs past, and the first one turns around and shouts at them to run. Moreover, he is strangely similar to Dan. The husband turns to his wife and suddenly sees a hooded man behind her, who destroys Jen. The frightened man rushes to run into the forest. He jumps out onto the path and hears his own voice, which is indignant at the fact that he almost hit him. Then he speeds up and again finds himself at the pond and hears a scream from the forest, advising him to run. And then he runs into Jen. He asks her to wait there and runs away while she screams after him. He goes to a tree where he feels sick. He returns to his wife and does not understand how she can be alive. Eventually, he suggests that they go the other way, and the girl follows him. But soon they find themselves at a familiar sign. They discuss the possibility of swimming in a dirty pond for the second time, and Jen picks up a bunch of headphones from the ground, but her pair is in her pocket. The couple goes into the forest again, and suddenly the husband promises his wife that he will not lose her, and they will definitely get out. Jen is puzzled, not understanding what he is talking about, and he assures that when they can get out, they will begin to appreciate each other. But then another Dan runs into the first, hits him with a stick and runs away. Looking at his copy, the husband expresses his dissatisfaction with his wife, who did not say that his hair looked so terrible, and asks to take off his double sweatshirt. The woman does this, not understanding how this Dan did not guess that she is from another time loop. She puts on the second Dan's sweatshirt and discusses how they are actually the same person. Then the wounded Dan comes to his senses. Dan number 2 refuses to finish himself off, and then the wife destroys the first Dan. Then they hear echoes of their argument about the party and a scream advising them to run. Soon this version sees other versions of themselves on the trail, and Jen notes that the couple has not yet realized that there are multiple time loops and asks to never separate from her, because if this version of Dan is good, then a bad one may appear. He picks up the discussion, because then there may be a universe where they are happy, but Jen is sure that she and her husband are stuck in some kind of hell. He suddenly thinks about the fact that they could have actually come to an end, then it would at least explain something. Jen asks her husband to shut up, and in general, she thinks that aliens who crash somewhere nearby are to blame for everything. Here they hear the voices of another couple, Dan and Jen, and watch them argue. The wife notes that she looks pretty good, and the husband likes that they look cute when they argue. The clones run in different directions, while Jen suggests that all this is some kind of lesson, having learned which they will be able to fix everything. But Dan thinks that only their best versions will be able to get out. And then another Dan comes out to this couple, whom the spouses immediately destroy. Unable to watch this, they leave, and the wife asks her husband to catch some food, but he reminds that he has not seen a single living creature here, except for their copies. Suddenly, they stumble upon a path. Jen suddenly wonders what she would do here alone. But then a scream comes from the forest, demanding to run. Jen begins to get hysterical because she does not want to end here. And Dan calms her down, even though his wife insults him. Wanting to calm her down, Dan kisses his wife, and suddenly they realize that they still really love each other. Then Dan apologizes for all their mistakes, and she responds in kind. And then Jen notices a homemade tent in the woods. The couple sneaks up to it and sees a whole mountain of headphones, and inside is a phone and a badly deformed copy of Dan. They both understand that there is no salvation and they will never get out of here, and confess their love to each other. But then a hooded figure comes out of the woods and quickly destroys this Dan. Jen tries to escape and falls into a pile of remains of one of her versions, and then runs to the lake, bumping into doppelgangers along the way. Eventually, she enters the water and swims to the other side of the pond. Having climbed to the shore, she rests on a large boulder and then suddenly notices a silver ball in the bushes. While she is looking at her reflection, she is destroyed by another version of Jen. Later, the next Jen drags her loot to the camp, where another version of Dan eats one of the doubles. Apparently, one of the versions of the couple realized that they need food and figured out how to get it, because there is an endless source of it. And so they try to survive indefinitely in this purgatory.